that was my question. When we talk about usable space, by narrowing the road, you are going to have this tree line in the middle. So I didn't know if we had discussed it yet.
It has not been discussed yet, and I think an important aspect of the whole environmental aspect of the project is it's a very, very broad umbrella. What you're saying is true. There's also a whole discussion on habitat and butterflies, and where we were seeing this project going is further, collaboration with either the people from the prior committees or the board or the subcommittees of the board to talk about what that's going to be. That's why, we don't even know, everything's a trade-off, right? So we have no environmental design yet for either one of these alternatives. So there's going to be a give and take with all sorts of things, and there's going to have to be some prioritization and costs associated with those, and that has yet to be done.
Thank you. So and I will ask further questions on cost today. I just want to make clear that we're not sure, and I assume that with either alternative, there's going to be more costs associated with it as we go down, potentially.
Potentially at this time, potentially later. We talked about phased improvements,
But we do know that the boulevard option has more than twice the amount of curb.
It has twice the amount of curb.
And some additional pavement, that area between the two boulevard tips, the width of the boulevard, that additional pavement as well. So, that's a fixed increase.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question about transit. I looked at the map, and I just want to make sure that I'm right on this. So is it 0 to 6 riders per station? If you add them up, I got up to 201 riders, or is that incorrect?
I don't know if you saw my response to your email. Okay, so you are interpreting the data correctly, that each stop has 0 to 6 riders, but there are 14 stops. So I think you're including the Wilson Drive stops, which the Wilson Drive stops have upwards of, one of them has the 27, one of them has the 39. So there's a lot of people that get on and off at Wilson. There's no proposal to change the stops at Wilson Drive. The southbound one?
You mean Hampton?
Wilson and Capitol.
Yeah,
The most southern stop. So the one heading southbound is just in front.
Because that's a transfer.
Right. But even the design of the roadway, it's just north of the right turn lane. There's a bus pad there now for it. The through traffic is not going to stop behind that bus. And then northbound, the bus stop was built with these Capitol Drive projects. So you take those two out. I added at the high ridership on 14 stops to be 103.
Okay, thank you. That was clarification for me. I have a lot more, but I will let the other trustees ask questions and turn it over until I can get organized. Thank you very much.
Any other?
Yeah,
I did because I
my main concern about the changes to Wilson Drive have always been the tranquil, quiet streets of the west side neighborhoods, and which are actually enhanced by having alleys, and even more traffic is often alleys. Anyway, and that we should not, we're not designing a subdivision new. I mean, a lot of the standards that you've been talking about in terms of, for example, buses, not having a pull-out for a bus. If we were designing a new subdivision, I could see, yeah, maybe that would make sense, but we're not. I mean, we have the space here. So I guess I consider, when we're talking about certain elements of the narrowing, I consider them a little extreme, and given that we have the space and the ability to keep pullouts for buses, for example. But I guess in looking, and we got the traffic analysis, I guess Thursday. It's Monday. We haven't had much time to think about it or look at it in a way to understand, or to have maybe a less formal meeting to ask questions about it. But I guess my interpretation is speeds will slow on Wilson Drive, on the preferred alternative, on either alternative, speeds will slow. Is that correct?
That's our intent, yes. The traffic calming proposed in both alternatives is to look to slow the speeds. Okay,
so speeds will slow. There will be more stopping. I mean, currently, as you described in the traffic study, we have de facto left turn lanes at every intersection, and we have bus pullouts currently at every bus stop now. So under the
parking lane that's being used for those reasons. I wouldn't say that either of those exist. People are driving, if people were parked there in the parking spots. the
I'm just
left turn
using
lanes
your,
would be there, the bus
I
stops would be
understand
there.
that, but I'm
Okay.
just using your term that we do have de facto left turn
Okay.
lanes, okay?
Right.
So, I mean, essentially, the way the road works is there are left turn lanes, and it's a negative that people, and that's what prompted a lot of this is concerns about pedestrian safety of just that people whipping around, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
So, under both the scenarios you're talking about, there's going to be more, the cars are going to have to stop more.
Through traffic cars? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
because we are reducing, there's not going to be a left turn lane at Congress, at Sheffield, at Alpine,
They
at
will have to stop behind left turning vehicles, which is what they should be doing now, but they are driving around them.
Okay, so, but I'm just trying to say, okay, and then if we do not have a space for buses to pull out of traffic, which we do have now on Oakland, and we do have now on Capitol, so this will be the only street in the village of Shorewood where people have to sit and wait behind buses to discharge passengers and pick up passengers. So that is also going to slow traffic, to the extent that there are buses and there are bus riders.
There will be buses stopping to pick up drivers, and if you are behind the bus, you will stop. Yeah.
Which is different from now.
Yes.
I mean, and I have to say, I mean, I was on the Wilson Drive Steering Committee from the beginning. Myself and Trustee Lane were there originally, and then Trustee Maher replaced Trustee Lane. So I mean, I've been at this Wilson Drive for, actually, it's been 2 years since the board adopted the framework. So this has been a long time, and almost from the beginning, myself and other people have been saying, why don't we need traffic, we need a traffic study, we need a traffic analysis. So now we finally got the traffic analysis, and I guess the scope of so for example, not looking at baseline. So we know that these things are going to change, but we can't really say, because we don't have baseline numbers, and I understand that was the scope you were given, I'm not blaming
No,
you.
actually, we proposed the scope, to be clear. The village, in our interview, we proposed what we thought was appropriate, given the traffic volumes that are out there, the left turning vehicles that are out there, and looking to do a safe roadway with pedestrian crossings. There's a lot of people that would tell you need to do a $50,000 traffic study on this thing, and we didn't think that was the case. So we recommended what we thought was appropriate for the roadway based on our expertise. And
Okay, so given that speeds are going to be slowing down somewhat, which is a good thing, that more cars are going to have to stop due to narrowing of the road. There's going to be more stopping and waiting for left turns. That there's going to be buses because you're saying we don't need to have space for buses to go in and out of traffic. So definitely the traffic and the traffic patterns and traffic speeds are going to change. I would say markedly on Wilson Drive. But you contend, no, there's not going to be any traffic diversion. And your reasoning for that, is based on that it's still going to be quicker or a straight shot. Although, as I pointed out, Marlboro only has 2 stop signs. Right now, I live on Wildwood and Congress. If I'm going to Whitefish Bay, I could take Wilson or I could take Marlboro. I mean, they're kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So, living there and living in the area and contemplating what I consider a pretty draconian narrowing of the road, I have a hard time believing. I guess I'd like to know is there analysis that you have done that says there's not going to be diversion, or are you just, because I don't see it in the traffic study. I see you kind of making an educated guess about it, but I don't see, unless I'm missing it.
Now,
Any
we
analysis?
have an analysis on diversion, and I will tell you, when you're talking about your northbound right tuners that are heading to Whitefish Bay, they do it today, they're going to continue to do it whether Wilson Drive is narrowed or not, because you're talking about a northbound movement. We're talking about the concerns of all the southbound lefts. And the logic of the traffic patterns for the southbound lefts, we're adding left turn lanes on the east-west streets. The streets that turn and go back up north is where we're not proposing the left turns, because we don't think the traffic is going to divert that way.
Okay, let's talk about the feeder streets, Wildwood, Alpine, Olive Hudson. Okay, you didn't look in detail at those intersections and the additional time it's going to take for people to make lefts out of there onto Wilson Drive.
Correct.
That's an issue too. I mean, that's an issue
Well,
that
as
is
I
a
stated in my
concern.
email today, we could do counts and study that further. Typically, when you're studying an arterial, the minor side streets operate at a level of service that's acceptable. We don't think they're going to change dramatically because Wilson Drive is actually a two-lane roadway today. So we did not think that we needed to count those minor streets and do an analysis to prove to you that that's the case, but we can do that at the direction of the board. We can count them and do further analysis.
Well, it's kind of too late now. I mean, I guess I'm not sure that maybe you were made to understand the amount of community concern and effort that's gone in, that has spent an entire year of meetings and public input and concern about, in particular about traffic issues. So I'm a little, I'm disconcerted by the level of the traffic study. I mean, essentially, to me, the question is where we have 10 feet of extra space. Do we put it on the west side or do we put it in the middle of the road as a boulevard? One concern I have is that at 40 feet, Wildwood is 40 feet at the bottom, Alpine is 44 feet at the bottom. We're essentially going to be looking at an intersection similar to like Olive and Morris. Two streets of very close in width intersecting with each other. It's going to look more like a neighborhood intersection than it's going to be, you know, visually perceived as this is the arterial, this is the neighborhood street. Under the narrow option. Under the boulevard option, I think there's more of a perception. It's wider, it's a boulevard, there's more of a perception. This is the arterial. Again and again and again, this gets to keeping traffic on the arterial street and out of neighborhood streets. So that's one argument I would have for keeping it as a boulevard. The other is, as Trustee Rozek points out, you know, people talk about so much this usable space and all the benefits we're going to get by adding an extra 10 or 15 feet on the west side. There's going to be a row of trees right through the middle of that. So to put in an amphitheater, an exercise station, some of these other things, is going to require us to take out trees, for one thing. For another thing, the things that have been proposed, when you look at the four boards that came out of the year of Wilson Drive Task Force work, okay, the question that was asked, for example, the development group was, what kind of development could we do if we had space there? You know, the question for the Parks and Recreation group was also, well, what kind of things could we put there, either with the space we have now or if we had more space? That was the question that was asked. The question wasn't asked at that time, which is better, a boulevard or space on the west side. So, I mean, you guys were not involved in that part of the process. So you come and look at these boards and you see all these things written up there and say, oh, people want all these things. But the question that was asked of people was, if you had space, what kind of things could you do? So people just came up with all kinds of things. And I guess to me, you know, a lot of the things that we're talking about, sitting areas, I'm not sure how attractive it's going to be to people to sit. I mean, people like to sit and watch other people. People don't really want to sit and watch cars go by, you know. Running or walking tracks, we have a bike path 10 feet away. I mean, why would we need another? I just don't see natural playground structures or play. It's a completely inappropriate place right next to a busy street with cars going 30 miles an hour and no shoulder to have a playground. I'm sorry. So I guess to say that oh, we're going to have all these great benefits on the west side, that we should give up the perception of an arterial, that we should narrow to the extent that we don't have room for buses, that we're all going to have to be sitting there waiting behind buses. And we're giving up the boulevard and the perception of an arterial. I just don't see the benefits. I don't see these things that have been proposed for the west side as being, you know, that spectacular. So that's my feeling. And the other thing about the money, absolutely, I agree. I don't think there's any way around that a boulevard is going to be more expensive. However, and I'm usually pretty not that interested in spending money if I can help it, but you know, this is a road, this is public infrastructure, this is something that people on that, all throughout the town, but particularly on one side of town, are going to be driving by and looking at and being affected by every single day. To me, this is what the village should be spending money on.
Yes.
So I don't, we are starting to talk and have some discussions about ways we can modify and perhaps, you know, maybe make some combinations of the two different options. I support that. I just, anyway, those are my feelings.
I read over all the public comments.
All right, well, my post.
Sit down.
Yeah.
I read through all the public comments, and I came away clearly that most people want a boulevard. Calming of traffic,
People who comment.
yeah, and safety. And I think aesthetically, you know, this is a major pathway through our village, and I think it would enhance that whole side of our community. We've spent a lot on streetscaping on Oakland and Capitol. We should invest money in this major artery through our village. The other